Yeah, really the first time we heard about these issues of this transgender ideology being forced on families was in 2018 when we got the call about a family that was having their daughter taken away from their custody because they refused to put her on high-dose testosterone.
Transgender teen turns to Hamilton County for help and is now in the middle of a custody fight.
Then Child Services filed neglect and abuse charges against the parents and actually were able to remove the child from parents' custody. We said we can't be silent, we have to do something about this. And so we actually hosted a press conference outside the Hamilton courthouse.
We are standing outside of the Hamilton County courthouse because history has been made in Hamilton County for all the wrong reasons.
And called on the state to act, to pass legislation to protect children and protect parents' rights.
And okay, how many gender clinics do we have in the state of Ohio? Children's Hospital is actually at the root of all of that. At 9 years old, we're putting kids on it was just kind of hard to believe.
You know, really when we first brought this issue forward, a lot of folks didn't, one, believe this was a major issue, and two, just didn't want to look at the problem.
What's happening with the transgender movement and transgender ideology in our culture, that's affecting households in every congregation.
You talk about David and Goliath situation. You're fighting Children's Hospital, you're fighting the mainstream media, you're fighting every Democrat voted against this bill, but you're also fighting some Republicans who bought into the lie that affirmation equals love and healing and disagreement equals hate and harm.
But because of who CCV is, the call that we have from the Lord to be faithful and to be strong, and our connections in communities and with lawmakers, it gave us a great opportunity to do some real good. So that's when we actually approached Representative Gary Click and said, hey, we really need a leader such as yourself to step up and take on this issue.
There's certain days in your life that you just never forget. I'll never forget the day when Aaron Baer said, hey, there's some folks I want you to meet. And I wasn't really prepared for what I was going to see. Moms and dads and victims of this radical gender ideology experimentation that was going on, being conducted by many of our hospitals and surgical clinics, and to be honest, even in some of our high schools where kids were being groomed into this ideology. And I saw the tears coming out of their eyes of grown men and mothers.
So we just have to stop these procedures on kids altogether. And it was at that point when we had Representative Gary Click come onto the SAFE Act that you started seeing a little bit more momentum. But even that bill didn't go anywhere early on, right?
The learning curve was huge. I think we crossed the finish line here with about 40 members on the bill, but initially nobody wanted to get on. And even under Click, I think we only had one hearing.
But once we realized how strong the opposition was and how hard the fight was, the more we realized this is worth fighting for. And today here in the studio, I have my good friend Chloe Cole with me.
Really where we saw the tide start turning was first and foremost when the individual stories, the detransitioner stories like Chloe Cole started coming forward.
Tell us exactly in your own words, what happened to you?
I am what they call a detransitioner.
To bring in witnesses along the way from a personal, an intuitive, and an experiential level. CCV helped me to make those contacts with those people.
And just at 13 years old, I had my puberty suppressed with a medication called Lupron. Just a month or so later, I was put on testosterone to masculinize my body. And at 15 years old, when I was still a sophomore in high school, I underwent surgery to remove my breasts.
We were doing real physical, psychological damage to these children. The suicide rate post-transition is 19 times that of normal. Children are being sterilized for life.
There are double mastectomies being performed on children in the state of Ohio. I understand your testimony to believe, you kind of worded this carefully, but we don't do it in our facilities. But do the physicians who work in your gender clinics refer patients to outside facilities where these types of surgeries are performed?
When we first started this journey, there was only about 2 states that had kind of waded out into this. And then it just started there was a tipping point moment with more and more states coming out, some medical malpractice issues, some whistleblowers.
I'm sorry, I'm neutral on this. I'm trying to be fair. But when a committee member asks you a question, instead of playing a word game on what referral means, I mean, you reminded me of Bill Clinton there for a minute. If you are not referring them, what do you call it?
Well, I think the question of, apologies again, Chairman, the question about do we provide a list of resources? Do we say you can't get that done here, but you could get it done there? Has that happened in our clinics? It possibly has over time.
And the more and more folks started realizing, oh, this is everywhere, the more they realized we had to do something about it.
And then there was Riley Gaines on the Save Women's Sports side.
On March 17th of 2022, my teammates and I, as well as female swimmers from universities around the country, were forced to compete against a male swimmer named Leah Thomas. Thomas and I raced in the 200-yard freestyle, and we tied. And yet NCAA officials told me that the trophy belonged to Thomas. It was crucial that Leah was holding the trophy.
Was really a good entree for the average Ohioan, for the average American that was really trying to get a grasp on what is going on.
When women are not given our own space to excel in athletics, our achievements are erased.
Really, with the Save Women's Sports bill, it's another one of those pieces of legislation where you're taking on giants, right? You're going toe-to-toe with these major universities like Ohio State, that in many ways have gone very woke. And so to have a representative like Representative Jenna Powell and early on Representative Reggie Stoltzfus put their name on this and champion it for something that seems so common sense, like boys shouldn't play in girls' sports, it does take a lot of political courage, especially in the pressure cooker of American politics.
The representative may proceed.
The Save Women's Sports Act is a fairness issue for women to be able to achieve their dreams in athletics in our state.
You know, when I first started, I remember one of the Democrats in caucus looked at me and they said, "You're making up a problem that doesn't exist."
This amendment will require schools that are part of the OHSAA to designate separate teams for participants of the biological sex. No school
And so, you know, there's always people on both sides of the aisle that are going to agree and disagree. But ultimately, you know, what we saw in polling and data as we went along was that Republicans and Democrats do agree on this issue.
National polling said 60 to 70% of Americans agree with the legislation laid out in both SAFE Act and Save Women's Sports. But even our Ohio polling said the same. We're done. This is crazy.
In 2023, we start a new General Assembly, and the Speaker works with Gary, and they amend Save Women's Sports into the SAFE Act at that point. So it then becomes House Bill 68, and there's a lot of support in our caucus for House Bill 68.
The question is, shall the Senate amendments be agreed to? The chair recognizes Representative Click.
I was sitting on the edge of my seat, and I was counting the votes, and just about every Republican voted yes. And we were very excited until the governor called me on my birthday. And he says, "Well, happy birthday, Gary. I'm going to veto your bill."
I cannot sign this bill as it is currently written. And just a few minutes ago, I vetoed the bill.
The interesting thing was we'd gone from people kind of slow to get on board, where now when the governor vetoed the bill, I was getting text messages. My phone has never blown up like it has yesterday. People want the override. They wanted to come to Columbus that day and override the veto.
Members of the Ohio House said they will be back here on Wednesday to consider a vote that would override DeWine's veto.
And that's how powerful the paradigm had shifted over the course of 3 years.
And so the legislature then said, you know what? We're going to do what's right for women and children, even if the governor does not. So we convened a special session. We came back in, and the House overrode the veto. The Senate overrode the veto. And thankfully now the bill is going to become law.
We had more votes for the override than for the original bill. And I just put my hands up like this. Yes.
We can make a difference. You do not see culture change to this magnitude without the body of Christ engaging in a major way. It was a beautiful thing to see.
God's entrusted us with the stewardship of this very important moment, and CCV is playing a key role in protecting biblical values for every Ohioan.
You know, we're going to have so many more fights like this in the years to come, and hopefully we'll be able to look back on this and see what is possible when we have courage and we are faithful.
We need partnerships with people like CCV to help us take a righteous stand here in Ohio.